Hello, everyone. My name is Linda.
And my name is Karolina.
And welcome to our podcast, It's Not Just Tech,
This is a podcast about the lives of two newly graduated friends moving from Canada to the United States to work for a corporate software company,
where we share our insights on the tech industry, our experiences, and adventures together in a new place.
Today is episode 1, Moving to Seattle. We will be chatting about our excitement and concerns on moving to Seattle and learning about local Seattle insights from a longtime friend and Seattleite. Today, we're going to be talking about moving to Seattle with our special guest, Hannah Wang, who is a seasoned Seattle local, has been there for a very long time, and got to experience a lot of amazing Seattle things. So Linda and I, we will be moving to Seattle for work starting this fall. My experience in Seattle, it's very touristy. I love it a lot. I've been there to actually visit Hannah as a kid. I love the historical vibe of the city. I feel that especially in Pike Place, like that touristy area. And I also get a sense that everyone loves the coffee there. The Starbucks, it's like this really fancy Starbucks place that shows you how they make their coffee and the coffee beans as well. So that's my experience in Seattle. What about you, Linda?
So, I haven't been to Seattle, but I'm excited to experience a new city. I love Toronto. Toronto is a beautiful city, but I've never really been to the West Coast, so like Vancouver or Seattle. I'm excited to see like more like nature, hiking trails, mountains, water. So that's for me. I'm excited to move a new city. There is a lot of concerns as well for me because moving from Canada to the States is completely new country, completely new like I guess environment, culture, everything is different. So I think there's gonna be a lot of things I need to figure out once I get there. So that's primarily my concerns, but I'm excited.
Awesome. So good thing we have our seasoned local here, Hannah, to tell us more about Seattle. So let's start off with your experience on how you arrived in Seattle and your experience here in the city.
Yeah, so my family first moved to the Seattle area when I was about 4 years old, I think. So this was 2002 or 2003, and we didn't actually move into the city proper. We moved to Sammamish, which is a small town, like a suburban type place. That's about half an hour's drive from the city. And I lived there until about 10 years ago when our family relocated to Bellevue, which is also not quite Seattle, but much closer. Bellevue is a larger town that is across the lake from Seattle. So like there's a 3 mile stretch of Lake Washington that separates Seattle from Bellevue, and you cross the lake on a huge floating bridge. So even though I've never actually lived in the actual city for the past 10 years, I've been pretty close by, and I went to school in Seattle. Time there and the city and the surrounding areas are just so great. I think like the older I get, the more I really like appreciate Seattle for what it is, and I realized how much I really missed it and all the things I had come to be familiar with in the area once I moved for college, because I went to college on the East Coast for 4 years. I'm temporarily back home for the summer, but I'm moving back to the East Coast again for grad school in the fall. And yeah, I basically only come back to Seattle over like summer breaks or winter breaks, or that's how it has been for the past 4 years. I think it's really taught me to appreciate a lot more about the city and to like make the most of my time here when I'm here, because even though I've had like a great time on the East Coast and I'm excited to be living in New York for a couple years at least, I kind of think the Pacific Northwest is like the best place in the United States.
Oh yeah, congratulations on your grad school, by the way.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, Linda was mentioning how like she'll miss Toronto a lot because you realize there's like a lot of amazing sights to see there too, right?
Yeah, Toronto's a beautiful city. I think even if you lived in Toronto all your life, you haven't really seen all of it unless you go just to like look around Toronto. So today I took a hike around like more of the downtown area, more on like the east part. So just like a lot of like hidden gems in the city. I think people should take their time to walk around and try to like tour more of like the city that they've grown up in.
So thanks so much for sharing your background.
So the first question is, What is Seattle culture like?
Seattle's a very diverse city, and so like because of that, I think I sometimes struggle to really pin down what its culture is like. But I think I have a slightly better sense for it now that I've spent quite a bit of time away from it. Sort of easier to like compare, you know. So I think Seattle is a very chill city compared to other like big cities in the U.S. Like New York, you know, really deserve this reputation of being extremely fast-paced, full of like cranky people and like no nonsense people. Seattle is just like it's not the same. Like it still definitely has a city vibe, it's an urban vibe, but it's more relaxed. It's more integrated with nature. I think that like in a weird way it translates into how people act, you know, like it's not like Seattle is populated by hippies or anything. I just feel like everything's a little bit more slowed down and people are much more into exploring the outdoors, into art and music. Seattle also tends to be full of like very politically progressive people, like even like compared to other sort of urban regions. And there's like always a thriving sort of underground scene for music and art and poetry, and yeah, it's just like it's very culturally rich as well. And yeah, and Seattleites love their coffee, love their food, love their seafood, especially. Like we're very very proud of being a coastal city, but also we're so close to so many like forests and mountains and rivers and everything. And so I think like most people's hobbies like involve something outdoorsy. Like everyone loves to ski or to hike or to swim or boat.
That's awesome.
It's amazing.
I love the outdoors too. So you mentioned that like the Seattle culture involves a lot around music and art and also like seafood and amazing outdoor places. Are there some hidden gems in Seattle that you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I think all the touristy areas of Seattle deserve their sort of attention, you know, like they're all worth visiting as well. But some of my personal favorite places in Seattle that are like less trafficked, I think. I'm gonna put a couple parks on this list. So there's one place called Gasworks Park, which is it's a very unique sort of park. It's an abandoned gasworks that's like sitting on top of a hill next to Lake Union. So it has like huge metal like structures that are all like rusted over and like it's very sort of science fiction-y, you know. And also has a great view of the entire like Seattle city and the lake next to it. And then speaking of views, there's also a place called Kerry Park, which is in the Queen Anne neighborhood. Kerry spelled Kerry, and all the locals know it as the best place in Seattle to get a great view of the city and the surrounding area. I'm not sure like why it is so great, but like you stand there and you just like yeah, it's sort of high up, like not too high up, but you just get this like beautiful clear view of the entire city and what surrounds it, and it's really cool. So if you go to these places, be prepared to like take sort of aesthetic photos and
For sure.
It's like an Instagram place,
Yeah.
maybe for photos.
I also really like Seattle beaches. I know that people don't usually come to the Pacific Northwest to lounge on the beaches. Like that's sort of a Hawaii thing or a California thing. I mean, it's true. Like it's not like Seattle doesn't really have sandy beaches, and it's often quite cold compared to the tropical areas. But I love the beaches. I think one really worthwhile place is called 𝐷𝐿𝐒𝐈 Beach, ALKI. The thing about like Seattle beaches is they're very like rocky and craggy and full of like trees and rocks and like seaweed and stuff, and it's very scenic and good for walking, even if you don't really want to lie down on the rocks and bask in the spray. There's lots of nature. There's lots of crabs, like seals. You can like spot maybe like orcas sometimes if you take a ferry. I would recommend checking out the beaches, even if it doesn't seem like a great touristy thing to do. Also, if you're interested in coffee, obviously Starbucks is made in Seattle, but people in Seattle like to pretend that we're all better than Starbucks, and we all have like our favorite local coffee shops to frequent. I think one that's really worth checking out is called Anchorhead Coffee. It's also pretty well known, but it's definitely like a more local sort of place and has just really nice coffee. But I don't know if you two are big on that.
I might be eventually.
No pressure.
I want to try that.
Might be more of a tea person currently.
And of course, I mean, I think this is like just like a more general thing, but Seattle is so close to so much nature, and I really encourage you to venture outside of the city for like hikes and just like outdoorsy things to do. These aren't like hidden gems so much as like it is nice to like get out of the city and drive like a couple hours at most will take you to Mount Rainier, which is like one of our most famous natural like sites. It's a national park. Mount Rainier is definitely like you know, tourists go to Mount Rainier all the time, but it's a huge mountain, so you can absolutely like pick any one of its like hundreds of trails to hike, and you will see like many beautiful sights. In the summer, it's especially nice because the snow is like melted a little bit. There's like flowers and wildlife, and the mountain itself is just amazing. But really, like no matter what direction you drive out of Seattle, Seattle, you're bound to come upon some great type of trail or nature reserve or park or national park. And yeah, I think that's just one of the things that makes Seattle so great and an absolute like must do while you're here.
Do you have any favorite hiking trails that you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I think there's like one of my favorite hikes in Mount Rainier that's like not too hard is called the Sourdough Gap, which is easy to remember. I also think Mount 𝐷𝐸 is a really good hike. Mount 𝐷𝐸 is a different mountain, obviously not Mount Rainier. That's closer to Seattle. It's like about like half an hour drive like north. This is like a tougher hike. It's also a very rewarding like view from the top. This is like less of a real hiking trail, but like Discovery Park is a place that's like just outside of the city that has a lot of trails and walks that sort of circle the beaches. So that's like a sort of different view, but I really like it. It's very accessible.
I'll definitely check it out. Linda, we're going to be
hiking for a while. So you mentioned that you love the Seattle seafood or just like food in general. What's like the Seattle food scene like? Because my experience with the Toronto food is that Toronto has a lot of good food, but I want to know about your experiences with the food.
Yeah, I think Seattle is obviously very well known for not obviously, but like it is very well known for its abundance of fresh seafood. And Seattleites are definitely very, very proud of that. So I don't know, like whether it's clam chowder or like lobster or like fresh fish. Yeah, there's just like tons of places to acquire like seafood and prepared seafood, and it's all great. Like it just wasn't the same when I was like in other parts of the United States that weren't so close to the water, and like I felt like such a snob. But the seafood just like when one is fresh and when it's not, it's like locally like you can taste the difference, and it's just once you've had like the Seattle taste of all that kind of fresh seafood and it's like wide availability, you don't really want to go back. But also another thing about the Seattle food scene is that Seattle's like comprised of just a lot of different kinds of people, like people from all different cultural and ethnic and national backgrounds, and the food like really reflects that. So there's like I just like I think it's so great too. Even now, like I feel like I've only scratched like the tip of the iceberg in terms of what sort of food is available, but a lot of different types of like Asian subgroups and cultures present in Seattle, for example, and those people and families open up great restaurants that you might have to dig around a little bit to find, but like there's just great like authentic like Thai food and Chinese food and Japanese food around here, for example. Lots of exciting sort of like fusion places that like crop up all the time, and I don't have time to like just eat around everywhere, but yeah, it's definitely a great place for food crawls if you're like willing to like be kind of exploratory.
Linda, after a hike, we're gonna go food crawling.
Yeah, I'm curious about the sushi there too.
We should start a Yelp account then. Changing gears a little. So I really enjoy getting involved in my community. One of the first things I did for one of my internships was look at local volunteer opportunities. I also know a long time ago you started a volunteer website to help connect students with volunteer places. So I was just wondering like where would be a good place to start looking for volunteers in Seattle, and any places that you want to give a shout out to.
Yeah, absolutely. Seattle has tons of volunteering opportunities. I mean, I think like most big cities. The site that I started in high school was specifically targeted at young people, like minors, and like children who wanted to get involved with volunteering or like impact work, but didn't know quite where to look because most of these opportunities are geared more towards like older people or adults. But now that we're all adults, you can like pretty much go for like anything that you have the like qualifications for if qualifications are necessary. So one thing that I think like one type of volunteer opportunity that's available to anyone who's just like able-bodied and decently fit is tons of stuff related to the outdoors or conservation. My sibling has worked a lot with the Washington Trails Association, I think is what it's called. Like you'll find it like if you look at it. This organization does tons of work each year, sort of like maintaining, renovating, and like documenting all the various trails in the Seattle area. And when you volunteer with them, like they can just deploy you to a trail that they're like working on that day, and like you get to chop branches, like clear some bushes. I don't know, like I've never did anything with them, but you could also volunteer with something like the Seattle Aquarium, various like parks associations. There's just like a lot of places around Seattle that are focused on preserving the ecological diversity around Seattle, and like making sort of efforts toward spreading awareness about the importance of conservation, stopping global warming. And there's also, I worked a lot in high school with this homeless shelter called Roots. It was targeted specifically toward young homeless people ages 18 2024. There are a lot of like organizations around Seattle, especially kind of like in the inner urban areas that deal with homeless populations or children from like disadvantaged families or like poor parts of Seattle where for example, like the education quality isn't as great or like the kids don't have like access to as many resources. So this is like the YMCA or like this organization called like the Rainier Scholars that works a lot with people in South Seattle who are often from like a lower income bracket. There are a lot of hospitals around Seattle if you like working in that sort of environment. I'm just like throwing things out here, like the Seattle Children's Hospital or like the Swedish hospitals and pet shelters. Those are always like looking for volunteers as well. Like Habitat for Humanity, like animal rescue and animal shelter places are also definitely a bunch. They're kind of like connected to the ecological like conservation type organizations that are in Seattle as well.
Awesome. Wow. That's so nice. There are a lot of volunteer opportunities for like taking care of the trails and raising awareness about the environment.
Mm-hmm.
I support that.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Are there any festivals that you think are like a must go? They could be like food related or just firework. A bit about that. I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so I see like also on the document that you asked where people celebrate the 4th of July, for example, lots of spots around Seattle where fireworks are held. But like the main Seattle fireworks are usually held in the near the Seattle Center, so like where the Space Needle is and everything. And honestly, so like the parades that like also occur during the 4th of July just kind of happen throughout downtown. You can be anywhere you want to partake in the festival. Then if you want to see the fireworks, there are also lots of places to choose from, but I would recommend again Cary Park, which is a place I shouted out earlier with its great view of Seattle. When they do the 4th of July fireworks over downtown Seattle, that'll be like an incredible view that also usually won't be like super crowded as opposed to like near the Space Needle where kind of like everyone will be jam packed. I think another sort of like a more festival type event that a lot of people like to go to is Bumbershoot, the sort of like local music festival that hasn't happened recently because of the pandemic. But like if you guys are into live music, I think it's like the biggest sort of music festival in the area. Happens every year. Also, we're just about to miss the whole like season for this, but Seattle Pride, which like happens all throughout June, is also really great. Like Pride parades, Pride events, Pride schools. You kind of have to like do your research to see like what's happening related to that during the month of June. But it's all great. Like Seattle has a very thriving sort of like LGBTQ scene, and like whether you identify with that community or not, like great to partake in those kinds of celebrations during June as well.
I didn't know there were so many different festivals in Seattle.
That's cool. Yeah, it's like a very festive city.
So Linda and I, we're also deciding on which neighborhood to move to. So we'll be working in the Redmond area, and we were deciding between like Seattle, Bellevue, Redmond itself, Capitol Hill, and SLU. We have like a decent budget, but we don't want to spend too much. But we are also hoping to be able to have a place where things do not close super early, like things that we can still do outside of work since we're going to be there full time. So I'm just wondering, like, what are your thoughts about each of these?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, I just want to clarify, like South Lake Union and Capitol Hill are both like part of Seattle proper. Like they're just different like neighborhoods within Seattle. I think if you're working in Redmond, okay, yeah. So some thoughts about that. Like the vast majority or a majority of the people who work in Redmond live often either in Redmond or Bellevue. Like my dad actually works in Redmond, and even though he hasn't gone to work over the past year, he like moved to Bellevue, like moved our family to Bellevue in part because it's kind of a convenient like in between Seattle and Redmond sort of location. And so the thing is, if you were to live somewhere in Seattle, like South Lake Union or Capitol Hill, one major I think drawback is that if you're going to work in person, which I'm not, the commute is going to be longer. Like you'll have to drive both like across the lake and then like some more to get into Redmond because it's like substantially like east of Seattle. But Seattle, of course, is definitely like it's the most happening sort of all the places that you listed. Things in Seattle do not close early. The difference between like South Lake Union and Capitol Hill, I think, is like not that much. They're both like very nice and like very diverse and exciting places to live within Seattle. You'll be close to the water and it's like very pretty and lots of access to food and parks and everything fun about Seattle. But you will have to like commute further. Whereas like in Bellevue, I think Bellevue itself is slightly like it's much smaller than Seattle. There's like less to do, although there's still like lots of like restaurants and parks and attractions. It is also like somewhat like on the pricier side, whereas like in Seattle you could probably find like slightly cheaper places to live, but you will be closer to work and you can like travel into Seattle whenever you like to do anything there. Like it's very close. Redmond itself I like would recommend less because it is also a nice area, but it's very sort of like residential and suburban, and well, if you live there, like you'll just mostly be surrounded by like the families of the people who work at like Microsoft and stuff like that. There's less to do there for sure. If you're down for sort of a more quiet style of living, maybe that might be the place for you. But if you want to like be closer to Seattle and its like attraction, like I would consider maybe a more like halfway point, like Bellevue, or you could live in Seattle itself again if you're willing to like commute a little bit further.
Thanks for your thoughts on each of the neighborhoods. I want to ask you, if you're moving to Seattle as like a new resident, where do you meet like the locals of Seattle, and like where do people hang out, or like are there any meetup spots that's good to make friends, meet people?
Yeah, that's something I've been like wondering about a lot too, because now that like I'm leaving college, I'm also like, how do people even make friends? Like,
Exactly.
I think in Seattle, this is like a very cliche, but coffee shops are a great place to meet people, especially once the pandemic's like more over, hopefully. But yeah, like everyone likes going to coffee shops. People often like to hang out there and chill. You can people watch, and you can definitely like strike up conversations with other people who are chilling there, or like the baristas. Because like similarly, bars are also good. I'm like not a bar person myself, and I don't think I've ever really been to an actual Seattle bar now that I think about it. But there's definitely like a lot of nightlife as well that you can hit up if that's more your speed. If you go to some of the more like popular parks within the city, like I don't mean like driving out like for hours to like the mountains, but like parks that are like closer to downtown Seattle. On a sunny day, there will be lots of people there. Like everyone kind of rushes out when it's sunny and it's like, oh my god, it's like such a nice day. We have to. I think that's definitely a great place to like either hang out with friends that you brought along, or to meet people. And this is like maybe like a weird recommendation, but I've also noticed that like local ice cream stores around Seattle like are often a great place to run into a lot of other people. Like on a nice day, everyone kind of rushes out to get ice cream. My favorite ice cream place is called Molly Moon's Ice Cream. Please check it out if you like ice cream, even if you like aren't looking to meet people. It's just great.
Yeah, I love my ice cream, so I'll definitely go check it out. It's just something me and Carolina are wondering. I guess like starting full time is so different from being in like a college, right? In college, you just like make friends naturally, but when you get into work, there's just like a professional boundary, and it's harder to make like friends who will be with you for a long time. So
I was also wondering, like, does it actually like rain a lot in Seattle? Because that's what I've heard and seen, and even like television, my friends. But summer is really nice, is what I heard, so it makes up for all of it. But I've also come across people who wanted to move out of Seattle because it was too cloudy most of the time, and they had to use like these sun lamps because they were getting a little depressed. So I was just wondering, did you have that sort of experience where it was too cloudy and you wish there was just more sun?
Yeah, so I think, so first of all, slight like fun fact is that Seattle, while it ranks very high among cities in the US, like I think it's like in the top 5 for most cloudy days in a year of like all the major American cities. It is not even in the top 50 rainiest. It is often very cloudy in Seattle. It often is raining, but rains in Seattle are usually like pretty light. Whereas I think in other areas of the US, when it rains, it's like torrential downpour and just like accumulates more rain. So it's like interesting to like think about how Seattle is one of the cloudiest and most overcast cities in the US, but like not one of the rainiest. With that being said, yeah, like, I think like I personally have grown to really kind of prefer the weather and climate in Seattle. Maybe it's just because I've like grown up here, but I like that it's like often like kind of overcast. Like for me, that's just sort of my ideal mode of living. Like I don't like to bake under the sun for too long. And I agree, summer here is so nice because it's often like sunny a lot more often, but it's also very like clear and refreshing. I spent a summer in like New Jersey, for example, a couple years ago, and it was like so hot and so humid all the time, and there were like bugs literally everywhere.
oh
I was
no.
like, wow, I miss Seattle, where like usually it hovers around like a nice like 70 to like maybe 80 degrees. Bugs are not everywhere. I definitely like would understand people getting sort of like seasonal affective disorder or depression around like the fall and winter months, because yeah, it is overcast a lot. And I used one of those like sun lamps when I went to college, not because so like overcast there, but because I spent a lot of time indoors and stuff, and I found it really helped me. So like I think in general, if you just feel like you don't have enough light in your life, having one of those lamps is like a pretty good way to keep your spirits up during the darker months. But I think it's gorgeous. I mean, today right now I'm looking out the window. It's like a beautiful, cloudless, sunny, like 80-degree Seattle summer day.
All right, Carolina, time to get a sun lamp for our room.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing all your experiences with us. We just want to know, you mentioned a lot of things you love about Seattle. What are some things you might not love so much?
I think one thing that has been bothering me more about Seattle, just like the general cost of living in Seattle has gone up rapidly over the past, I'm not sure how long, but like decade or two. there's a lot of different like reasons for this. Like Seattle's like suddenly becoming a place where a lot of people are like moving to, including you guys. Like this isn't like necessarily inevitable, but I think like Seattle hasn't implemented enough policies to deal with the fact that a lot of like people with higher income and like more wealth and stuff are moving to the area and kind of like driving up costs of living, displacing lower income communities of color. I personally haven't really been affected by this as much. I know a lot of like families have been in the past, again, like decades, and I definitely noticed like things getting more expensive. The bridge that connects Bellevue to Seattle, by the way, is a toll bridge. And like sometimes I forget the fact that tolls are not usually close to $5. Like I go out elsewhere and I'm like, whoa, I did not have to pay nearly as much to like cross this bridge. It's just getting more expensive. Even my parents have said they're like, if you don't go into like a tech job after you graduate college, like it might not make sense for you to like move back into Seattle, which makes me sad. I think they're exaggerating. What else to do in Seattle besides like tech jobs? But it's a little indicative of like what sort of trends the city is like heading towards. And it's like it's not bad to like attract tech people and tech jobs and stuff, but I think there's some like shifts that need to like be resolved eventually.
Well, those are all of our questions for today about Seattle. We want to say again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. That was a really fun conversation. Thank you all for watching or listening to our podcast. It's not just tech, and you can find us on Instagram, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, so don't forget to follow and subscribe.